Günaydın hanım.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. You may have heard their music before at a subway station, and you may have thought, I'll listen to them next time, because that's what happens when we run into music in public spaces. But running into such good quality music that really heals the soul is not very common. So we will be talking about philanthropy and youth, and we would like to thank Cemal Yon and Ibrahim Orazov for glorifying our day. Now, dear guests, Sabancı Foundation is organizing the 16th International Philanthropy Seminar this year, so welcome everyone. I am Duygu Demirdağ, and it is a great source of pride for me to be on this stage. And I really feel like I'm among family when I'm here. And I am here to learn from all of you today, to find out about what I can do and how I can create change, because I realize that I can't do this on my own. I need some people to accompany me on this journey, and those are exactly the people we will meet today from Turkey and the world, those who are very young at the beginning of their journey or those who are very experienced along the way. So this year our seminar is titled Philanthropy and Youth, and when I look across the hall today, of course we always have high expectations from them, but we may not always be providing them with the necessary opportunities. And as our great founder Mustafa Kemal Atatürk said, all our hope is in the youth, but sometimes we're not able to provide them with hope ourselves. And when we look at the dictionary definition of philanthropy, there are a lot of different definitions, but the one I like the most is the love you feel for people. So what's important is to combine that love with expertise and the time we spare, and to provide things for people. And we're going to try and find out how we can encourage youth participation. So it's been 16 years since the beginning of the seminar. It's a huge deal of effort. Private sector comes together with the public sector under the perspective of philanthropy, and we find out what is being done across the world, and we talk about best practices. So before we get started, just some technical reminders. We do have sign language interpretation for those who have hearing for impaired vision, and for hearing impairment, and we also have our vocal descriptions for those who have sight impairment. We have audio descriptions, and of course for simultaneous interpreting you can take your headphones and use channel 2 for English and channel 1 for Turkish. If anyone needs headsets for simultaneous interpreting, you can raise your hands and the headsets will be delivered to you. And finally, everything we discussed today will be put into an image through our illustrator, Mina Yancı, simultaneously today. So we will be seeing that from time to time. And again, we have our YouTube live stream, both in Turkish and English, as every year. So people can view us online as well. So there's one thing I would like to say at the beginning, because sometimes we forget about it. Now, there are people who are very successful and they don't like to be talking about this very much because they're usually busy doing their next great project. And the Sabancı Foundation and the great team, some of them are backstage right now, for inclusiveness and for these great meetings. They are putting a lot of effort. It's a lot of hard work that goes into this. We said 16 years. If we are able to talk about being hopeful and being well all together. We owe it to them. So let's start with a round of applause for them. Now, another part that I really like is, of course, we are here to talk about new approaches in the area of philanthropy, but we are also here to build new networks, to become acquainted with one another. So that's what we are going to start with. And if you see me on stage, you may not notice it, but actually in social life, I am quite shy, quite timid, and it's very hard for me to meet new people. My mom says, you go into so many social circles, but you don't meet anyone. So for those of you who are like me, we have a special service for you, and that is our little icebreaker. If you don't know the person next to you, please introduce yourselves to one another, and if you know each other, then start and get into a conversation.
Vallahi harikasınız.
You're doing great. Again, I didn't get the chance to speak to anyone, but that's okay. But we will continue in the foyer area afterwards. But really, you're amazing. I thought you would just, do it for the sake of doing it. But I saw people embracing one another. Great crowd. Okay, so that's a good start to the day. Now, dear friends, dear guests, in the area of philanthropy, there are those who have not been equally represented, and they actually would have great contribution to problem solving, and that's the youth, and we are here to understand them and to understand how we can improve youth participation. As you know, we're in the era of multiple crises, and that means that when there's one crisis that appears, it comes together with its family, and they then stay around for a while. We have political, economic, and environmental crises, and of course, the youth are influenced by this as well, especially those who are at the beginning of their life journey. And philanthropy has a great role in all of these areas, but what is the level of youth participation? Now, when you look at it, we have the youngest population in world history right now. Let me see your guesses. How many people do you think there are across the world between 16 to 25? It's 1.8 billion young people. And when we look at Turkey, by the end of 2022, there are 20.4 million young people. That means 1/4 of this great country. So we have 1/4 of our population that is young, but how much are they part of decision-making processes? Well, we're going to talk about all of this, but we'd like to start with the welcoming speech of our host. So I would like to invite our host, the President of the Board of Trustees of Sabancı Foundation, Ms. Güler Sabancı, for her welcoming speech. Welcome. Yes, good morning. I would like to thank Ms. Duygu. I may be repeating some of the things she has already said. So, distinguished representatives of civil society, dear members of the press, dear guests, I would like to first of all sincerely welcome you all. And before I start my speech, I would like to thank Cemal Yön and Ibrahim Orozov for starting this day in such a great way. And another way of activism is art and music, of course. Now, they are two young people who are uniting people with music in public spaces besides their ongoing careers. So I'd like to congratulate them for that, and I'd like to thank our leaders at the foundation for inviting them here today. Now, dear guests, we are organizing the 16th International Philanthropy Seminar, and I am very happy to be with all of you at Sabancı Center today. The first seminar was organized in 2007, and we have been continuing the International Philanthropy Seminar uninterruptedly, and we are trying to build bridges between our country and global scale activities, and we are trying to share trends in the area of philanthropy and shed light upon different practices. Now, as we all know, as Ms. Duygu also mentioned, we are experiencing a time of multiple crises as humanity, and it is becoming more and more important to act together in such times. So, during today's seminar, we are going to try and see things through the lens of the youth with the help of institutions that work with youth. And we are going to try and hear the participatory approaches that they have developed, because the youth are not just focusing on the future, they are stakeholders of our current day, and they are developing strategies for social problems, and they are developing innovative solutions. Now, dear guests, of course, we believe that the existence of youth is very important in our activities, because it is important to raise youth that are self-confident and that are aware of their own potentials. That is important for our country and for humanity in general. It's an important value. And that is why we are focusing on education, social change, culture, and arts, and we are trying to support youth in all of these areas as a foundation. All across our country, since our inception, we have opened 38 educational institutions, including the Sabancı University, and 19 student dormitories in order to support the access of children and youth to education. And until today, we have provided scholarships for more than 52,000 young people in the area of education. In the area of culture and arts, we have the Turkish Youth Philharmonic Orchestra that is being led by Cem Mansur, and we have been supporting it since 2009. And also with the Sabancı Foundation short film contest, we are trying to support youth in developing creative solutions for social issues. Those who are into filmmaking are part of this. And also we have our grant programs on the social change side to support the inclusion and representation of youth. So, dear guests, youth represent 1/4 of the world population, and we see that also in Europe, foundations make the best use of the activities developed by youth, and we are trying to prioritize youth in all of our activities, and we are trying to do everything we can to support their development. However, it is not enough to do things just for the youth in our day, because we can see that in the area of philanthropy and decision-making processes, their voices are not heard enough. Research is showing us that those young people who are included into participatory mechanisms have more involvement in civil participation in their future lives as well. And with a report published by Philia, which we are also a member of as a foundation, we see that the institutions that have youth participation recommend this to other institutions as well. And we do also see that despite the fact that youth are perceived as transformative in the area of philanthropy, there are still a lot of institutions, those who allocate funds for various practices, who are still not taking steps towards youth participation. So that is why today we will focus on how we can include youth in decision-making mechanisms. And we are going to hear our first panel about best practices that have youth participation. And then in our next panel, we will be hearing from the young people themselves about how they're active in civil society, and I am very excited. Now, first of all, we will start with Nazra Ayub today. She will have a keynote speech, and she emphasizes that we need to start seeing youth as experts in all areas. Now, the youth today who are digital natives, and I saw a lot of young people this morning as I was walking into this hall. Now, they know the rules of the soul of this new world, and they know the social rules that are applied today. And that is why they can develop more inclusive and innovative solutions. They also are questioning these multiple crises and the relationships between them, like climate, environment, health, migration, inequalities. And today is also the 5th of December, World Philanthropy Day, World Volunteers Day, and I believe it is very meaningful to have this event on this day, because currently there are people across the world that focus on volunteering and on philanthropy. So there are 1 out of every 3 young people are volunteering in one way or the other, and there are around 600 million young people who are volunteering for the solution of social issues. And of course, seeing that our youth are considering philanthropy in a multidimensional manner really gives us hope for the future, and we saw this during the earthquake as well. And the Sabancı University Social Sensitivity Projects Unit also focuses on active projects in this area. And today we will also be hearing about the high school sensitivity awards, which is an example of these activities. And we will have its launch event this afternoon, and I would like to thank everyone who put effort into this. Now, dear guests, of course, we are very proud to see that youth are becoming involved in social issues. There are those who are part of volunteer activities while they're at school, and once they graduate, then they become part of the civil society in their career paths, and we have a huge number of people like this. And my friends working at Sabancı Foundation are very good examples of this. Now, the youth are not only citizens of the future, they are citizens of our day, and they can become part of philanthropy in many ways. with technology and digitalization as well. And I believe that we can all start a change together with the experience we have accumulated over the years, because we are trying to create opportunities for philanthropy to be able to go through a self-transformation with the participation of youth. Now we are approaching a new year, and there are a lot of problems that require immediate solutions. I'd like to thank you all for being with us today, and I would like to cordially greet you all. Thank you very much.
Sayın Güler Sabancı'ya değerli görüşleri, katkıları için çok
Thank you, Güler Sabancı, for your valuable insights and contribution. The world is watching Sabancı Foundation's contribution on philanthropy, but everyone who has the chance to watch her will have the same idea. I think we should include Güler Sabancı's name to the topic philanthropy and youth, because whenever there is a new method, a new way about education, when she listens to it and shares it, her eyes sparkle. So I think that she is part of the youth aspect of our program. Distinguished guests, we're going to continue with the keynote speech. It is by a young activist who inspires hope. We're very happy. Soon, Nadia will be on stage. She's an activist and an author. Since the age of 15, she's been combating with gender inequality and racism. She supports youth participation in philanthropy. She runs campaigns against violence against women, and she got the Diana Award. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from her. Now, please applause Nazra Ayub.
Hello, hello, hello. It's great to be here with all of you today, speaking on an area that is so close to my heart. Youth-led philanthropy, the future of this space. Now, before I delve into this, I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit about my own journey being an activist, being involved in philanthropy, and in turn becoming an advocate for youth-led philanthropy. So, my name is Nazra. I am 26 years old from Bristol, UK. I started campaigning for the end of violence against women and girls from the age of 15. It was at this age of 15 I found out about female genital cutting, an act that violates the bodies and rights of women across the world. And it was that year I decided to get involved in raising awareness on the issue, alongside tackling Islamophobia and grooming of young people. I was a loud teenager, but also very shy. Working with my local grassroots organisation, Integrate UK, helped me find my voice. At the age of 17, 18, I trained lawyers, nurses, medical students on how to safeguard and protect victims and potential victims of FGC. There was a little girl from Bristol. Her name was Yusra, who was a normal, straight-A student, and she was radicalized online and then left for Syria in 2014. Our community was in shock. And what was even more heartbreaking was the fact that the media portrayed this young girl as a criminal rather than a victim of grooming. And as a response to this, I sat with former prime ministers of the UK as we talked about how we can effectively tackle Islamophobia and minimize the number of children being groomed to become radicalized online, and do this in a positive way where we don't victim blame and marginalize communities. Now, as a young teen, I couldn't tell you anything about philanthropy or grant making. However, what I could tell you was a lot about what my community needed, what young people in my community were passionate about, and what policy needed changing in order to create a more protected and better society for young people. And because of these lived experiences, being on the ground and working with my community, it gave me a real insight into how under-resourced our work was and what support we needed to continue to create change. Now, I am no different from the large number of young people across the world, as young as 6 years old, creating change in their communities, applying pressure to their governments and demanding a better future, With the increase in unrest across the world, climate change causing havoc across nations, young people worried about employment, education, and their reproductive rights, there isn't a section of social justice issues where you won't find young people tackling it. And that's why at Global Fund for Children, Spark Fund came to existence. Spark Fund was a response to the recognition in the COVID-19 pandemic that youth were at the forefront of tackling social justice issues, but were not at the decision-making tables. The recognition that young people's movements and youth civil society was under-resourced. Therefore, it was truly time to put shifting power into action and put young people at the heart of decision-making, empowering them further to make decisions that would impact their communities. We held design and decision-making panels in 4 regions. These were Southern Africa, Eastern Europe, South Asia, and Americas. We recruited around 10 young people from these regions to help design and craft the criteria, application questions, and also decide how much they would give organizations after they were shortlisted when the fund went live. All panel members were paid for their time and also offered a communication stipend. And from this process, we then had 56 organizations across the 4 regions funded. Organizations that were majority youth-led and youth-focused. So for me, I led on the Southern Africa panel, where we had 16 organizations funded. We had young people aged between 18 to 30 from Namibia, Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, and Lesotho on the panel. It was a fascinating experience, and not just because we had young leaders making the decisions, but also the context, knowledge, and expertise they brought to the fund that was so vital. I'll give you guys an example. One of the questions was brought to the panel, which was, should we fund registered groups or unregistered groups? Most of the panel said, let's fund registered groups. Then the panel members from Namibia spoke up and said, no, actually, let's fund unregistered groups also. So in Namibia, they gave context. In Namibia, unregistered groups, it was very easy for them to register, however, very expensive. So therefore, we would be missing out on youth-led groups that are unregistered because of the financial barrier. And that's how we settled on the option to apply, being open to registered and unregistered groups. This example was so small, but so important. Young people know the reality of their lives and those around them engaging in this work. If we did not have those representing their communities on the panel, there would have been a high chance of missing this information. Now, the Spark Fund had an unintentional impact that was very welcomed as well. So Global Fund for Children has a Youth Leadership Council, which is how I became involved with them initially many years ago. The Youth Leadership Council advises and works with GFC to ensure youth voices across the regions we work with are valued within our work and our strategy. Now, when I was on the council a few years ago, we had around 10 applications from young people when we were looking for members. After the Spark Fund pilot, we were recruiting for new members again, and do you know how many applications we had? Over 600 applications globally. We went from having 10 applications at the time when I was on the council to having over 500 after we started doing youth-led philanthropy. So for me, what I saw was engaging young people globally brought more attention and channels of networks we could get the word out to regarding opportunities. In effect, they shared with their communities and so forth. So we now have a strong and talented group of young people working with us on our council. Sadly, it goes to show further how much of an appetite there is for young people to be engaged and get involved. The opportunities just need to present themselves. Now, before I wrap up, I want to end this with some learnings, and hopefully that these will leave some food for thought, and we can continue to think about these during the morning and the afternoon. So the first thing I reflected on was this idea of risk-taking. Risk-taking is key to youth-led participation, to truly be youth-led. There are some things that may not follow the vision you have, such as the decisions young people make, what they want the criteria to be, and even the threshold for who can apply. When I facilitated the Southern Africa panel, there were many things I did not agree with, but I had to understand my way of thinking isn't as important as a facilitator. My role is to guide and lean into the new ways of thinking. Secondly, being open-minded to this, understanding that it will be a pilot and there will be a lot of learnings, will save you a lot of sleepless nights. This goes hand in hand with being flexible. You have to understand timelines may shift, things will change as you go along the journey. It is important to adapt and change course where needed. For us, we did a survey mid-panel process to ask our panel how they were finding things, how things were going, and where we can improve to make it less burdensome. Sometimes they would ask for more time to review applications. Other times they would ask for more training to be more informed in terms of grant making. And we tried to incorporate these as we went along in the journey. Also, it is important to compensate your young people, pay them. There's a cost of living crisis globally, and young people are often burnt out and already not paid enough for their activism and campaigning. Training. How can young people make informed decisions about funding if they do not have the tools, resources, and knowledge to do so? Training and empowering your young people to make informed decisions is vital for the process. Assessing the kind of expertise you have in the room will help you work out the training needs. Not being extractive. You don't want to just take from young people. How do you engage with them after the panel process is done? We asked our young people, how would you like to stay engaged? We invited them to convenings. We kept WhatsApp groups and mailing lists to send them opportunities. One of our panel members was nominated by us to be part of the Kofi Annan Changemakers program. Some panelists spoke at our events. Others, we got them to speak on articles. There is so much space and opportunity to keep young people engaged, and it is important to stay in touch after. Lastly, and the biggest lesson I learned, and I think is the most valuable, transparency about where and to what extent the young people can make decisions. This is a cause for frustration for both young people involved and facilitators. Young people will come with big dreams and creative ideas only to be met with, no, we can't do that, and no, that's not possible. Being transparent with what the rules and regulations are with the fund, the parameters where there is freedom to decide, and what you want young people to make decisions on will remove the risk of having disappointed and disengaged young people at the end. Don't sell young people dreams. If your fund is restricted, if it's not flexible, let the young people know. Not all funds can be unrestricted and flexible, although should be the goal. So let the young people know, be transparent, be honest about where you want them to make decisions and how much power they do actually have. And I will end with this. Young people are building on the legacy of those that came before them, building their communities and fighting against injustices. Give them the chance to be resourced authentically and let them lead. Thank you.
Sevgili Nazra Uyba, çok
Thank you very much, Nazra. Distinguished guests, before we continue with the panel sessions, we want to learn the opinions of this room about youth and participation, so we have a brief Menti exercise. You're going to see a QR code on the screen. You can scan it on your phones, or you can go to menti.com. You can write it in Turkish characters, go to the website. You're going to see this code 57224762. When you do this, what are you going to see? There will be two questions. The first question is, what do young people expect? Some may say, we just want some peace in life. It's free. We're not interfering with your answers. So please type the words that pop up in your mind. Oh, it's already there. Peace, hope, welfare, understanding, freedom, value, career. And the words that repeat most are in larger font: freedom, opportunity, hope, future, support, equality. Great, you're great. And we also see that there are different lives, we live different lives, there are different experiences, therefore our expectations may also change. So it's not a monolithic request, but at the basis of all of that, there are values, and that's great to see, like freedom, prosperity, having a voice, opportunity. That's awesome. Now, in the second panel, we're going to hear even more about that. So let's continue with the second question. And in this question, at the organization level and at the school level, how much are young people involved in the process? But we have a multiple choice question here. I'm sure you're going to be voting quickly. They are planned, the youth programs are planned with youth. Youth are represented in decision-making mechanisms. There are youth-led programs. youth are involved in monitoring and evaluation processes, youth are underrepresented. Well, we have some hopeful results. There are youth-led programs. Of course there are, and we're glad that there are such programs. Well, I believe I'm going to stand on the hopeful side. There are youth-led programs. They are represented in decision-making mechanisms, and something that they are underrepresented. We're equally right, so we're together to provide that together. They're included in the monitoring and assessment processes, and youth-oriented programs are planned together with youth. So those were the choices. Let's see what stands out. There are youth-led programs. That's what stands out. We need to see more often. We need to see that more often. We're going to continue with the first panel of the day. The stage is being set for that. Who are we going to talk to? What are we going to discuss? Well, we're going to have two panels, as you know. The first is effective strategies for youth participation in philanthropy. I'm going to be moderating this panel. Who is going to join us? Elevate Children Funders Group Director Heather Hamilton, Toplum Gönüllüleri Foundation General Director Ayşe Kırımlı, Learning for Wellbeing Foundation Board Member Maria Cora Orejas will be with us today. So what are these organizations doing? How much can they involve youth? That's what we're going to be discussing. One reminder, the panel will be in English. If you would like to listen to the interpretation, please get a headset as the stage is being set. So, the stage is ready. Let's applaud our distinguished panelists and let's welcome them on stage. I will briefly introduce our panelists and then we'll quickly get started. Who is joining us? Well, formerly, for girls not to be married at an early age, there was this global struggle. Girls Not Rights Network is a network, and Heather Hamilton was a manager there, and she is now the director of Elevate Children Funders Group. In 2022, this network published a guideline for youth and children for funders. Why is this important? Because you're going to see a Turkish summary of this guide through QR codes in the lobby. I think it will be very useful. Another distinguished speaker is dear Ayşe Kırımlı. Since 2021, she is the general manager of the Society Volunteers Foundation. She has more than 25 years of experience in the private sector. She's assumed active roles in civil society, and since 2011, she's been volunteering as a career coach for university students. Looking at her, I remember the times that we spent on the field together, and we're going to be discussing that. And dear Maria Cora Orejas, youth, children, parents, and professionals, they develop programs. It's a Dutch-based foundation, Learning for Wellbeing Foundation. She is in the board. She has more than 15 years of experience in philanthropy and in Europe at the United Nations level. She worked in different councils of philanthropy, and she assumed various roles. As I said, the panel will continue in English, with your permission. And then we're going to be assessing the outputs of this session.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to start with Heather. Heather, could you please provide us some insight about Elevate Children Funders Group and its mission? How do its members collaborate and contribute each other's efforts?
Great, thank you very much. Elevate Children Funders Group is an international group of funders from around the world who work on behalf of child rights and well-being. By funders, we mean people who are moving money and making grants. And this is everyone from small family foundations right up to large international endowed foundations. They work together on a common theory of change, that by working together as funders, they can move more and better money for children. The outcomes for children will be improved if funders collaborate. So they collaborate in 3 ways, and that's assisted by us, the Secretariat, but Elevate really is its members. It is a network of members. So the first way that they work together is that they learn. They learn how to do their work better, so philanthropic practice, and they learn more about the issues and learn from each other. So they do that through dedicated learning journeys on issues like monitoring, evaluation, and learning for systems change. Doesn't sound incredibly interesting, but very important. And things like child and youth participation and trauma-informed grant making. The second way that they work together is that they work together to align their funding or move towards co-funding or joint funding. So there's a whole spectrum of ways that funders can align their funding to become more impactful. And so they do that through very simply sharing information about what they're working on in a member directory or on an online resource community. But we've also done things like develop joint toolkits, like our toolkit for child and youth participation, which was really driven by members and young people. Developing research reports, working groups on things like children in care or mental health. But we've even created some funds that have been spun off, like Ignite Philanthropy to End Violence Against Children, or a new initiative called What's Possible, which is members putting money into a pot for young people themselves to be giving out through participatory grant making. And then finally, they advocate together through joint sessions at international meetings, or co-authored blogs and articles, or things like a statement. We did a statement to the UN Human Rights Committee on Children in Care. So there's a whole range of ways that they work together. And what it really does is go beyond just grant making into real alignment for greater impact.
So I'd like to continue with the toolkit. I think it's one of your recent publications, right?
Yes,
yes. The name is A Funder's Toolkit for Child and Youth Participation. Could you share some of the key recommendations? So when implementing such a project, what are the initial steps that the funders should consider?
Fantastic. Yeah, first of all, listen to Nazra, because just do what she said. I'll build on that a little bit. So also I wanted to thank the Sabancı Foundation for translating the poster of the toolkit itself into Turkish. That's now available on our website, and I think they have some copies. But the first thing is to really make it meaningful. We're not just going for youth participation, right? Like, it can actually cause more harm than good if it's not actually meaningful, and meaningful to the young people involved. And what that means is to get away from tokenism and to really, really commit to shifting power to young people. To ask yourself really honestly at the beginning, how much control are you willing to give up? And to say, I'm willing to start small, to recognize there will be problems, to iterate, to learn, and to be informed by the young people. This is a process. It's not a product. The second thing is to get your leadership on board. So this is something that really requires executive leadership and board leadership to be successful, because you can run an entire youth process, and if you ask young people what they think and need and want, and it's ignored, you've just, again, done more harm than good. So there's some resources in the toolkit itself that show the evidence base, but what our members have found most useful is really just having young people talk to your leadership and board. They're the best advocates for themselves. So thirdly, really center inclusion and intersectionality. And by intersectionality, I mean recognizing that different people face different discriminations, and those discriminations are overlapping. They can face discriminations of race, gender, ableism, age, and making sure that you're drawing from across people with different experiences, and the outcomes will be better. And finally, don't limit yourself to youth-focused projects. As Nazra said, there isn't an issue in this world that young people aren't on the forefront of changing.
It's so important. After today's sessions, we'll have actually a roadmap, concrete solutions about how to move forward. So thank you so much, Heather. I'll have one more question for the second round, but now I'd like to continue with Ayşe now. Community Volunteers Foundation, TOG, as we know, is a significant civil society dedicated to empowerment of young people. Even I can talk about hundreds of examples that change millions of young people's life. But can you please give us an overview about TOG's mission, initiatives, and projects?
Sure. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about Community Volunteers Foundation, or Toplum Gönüllüleri Vakfı in Turkish. Since its establishment in 2002, so almost 21 years passed, we are working for encouraging the social responsibility of young people, especially young people who are at the universities in all over the country, and we are empowering them by our scholarship and mentoring programs. Not only this, we are also giving some trainings to young people if they need it. And these trainings are mainly about the project development techniques, communication skills, as well as gender equality, human rights, and children's rights. So for the past 21 years, as you said, more than 1 million young people have worked together with us and created so many social responsibility projects. And almost, we can say that 21,000 social responsibility projects have been created by young people up to now. And these projects are always in line with the Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations. Also, we are creating projects with some of the institutions, either in private sector or in the other NGOs. All these projects are always in line with the problems of young people in the country or in the world. The topics are about the youth employment and youth capacity building. Gender equality is one of the essential problems in all over the world, and peer bullying. We, as community volunteers, also take responsibilities during the disaster times. As we all know, we are living in such a country who unfortunately are witnessing so many disasters from time to time. As you know, we experienced a very big disaster on February the 6th. More than 11 cities were affected. Hundreds of thousands of people died, and many were wounded, either psychologically or physically. We, as community volunteers, by our young volunteers, take actions during the disaster times. Some of the examples that I can give you is that we are quickly organizing a crisis desk. We work for the 8 warehouses and so on. As you know, we were together with you during September. We were in the region. We there witnessed so many different problems coming from the people who experienced this disaster. And then we, together with our young volunteers, decided to establish a sustainable project, and we built there the support centers. Actually, I do not want to talk about in detail, but later maybe we can talk about this. So in short, actually, young people are the core value, and they are just in the middle of everything for Community Volunteers Foundation. They are the decision makers. They are the creators because they have such a potential. We believe that with the inspiration we receive from them, we can achieve everything. We can solve all the problems if we want to, but the most important part is the young people. In short, I can say this to you.
And as a journalist who witnessed what you have done in Hatay on many cities in Turkey, I know that you're being modest, but thank you so much for your great efforts. It means so much for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as a part of TOG's mission, you actively promote youth participation within the organization, as far as I know. Can you please give us some details about this participation mechanism?
Sure. As I said, young people, mainly the university students, are our core value. These people are at every layer of TOG, at every layer of our foundation, which means that, first of all, I can share with you some of the participation mechanisms that we have in our organizations, but we have some mottos. Before that, I would like to mention about them. We say that led by young people, guided by adults. This is our main motto. So as you understand, the leaders are the young people, not the adults in our organizations. When we say this, our young volunteers say that we are here not to criticize, but to change. Mm-hmm. So we believe that the change in the world can only be achieved by the support, by the decisions of the young people. So the first participation mechanism is our board itself, the management board. Exactly the half of our board consists of young people. I mean the university students. They are the decision makers. They can participate all the decisions about the foundation strategy, foundation's financial and business plan, and everything. So they have the right to say. The second one is our Youth Council. Actually, Youth Council was started 21 years ago, which means in the first year of our establishment. It is organized and created by the young volunteers, young university students. And since then, we continue to organize our youth councils. What is youth council is? In these councils, our university students express their needs. First of all, they come together from different cities of Turkey. They come from 81 different cities of Turkey. Hundreds of students are come together. They express their needs, make their decisions, and prepare together for the new projects for the next years. We, as the professionals of our foundation, only support them. We are not involving during their decision makings. We are just supporting them. Thirdly, as I said, we are here to support the social responsibility projects of young people in all over Turkey. While doing this, they organize their projects in their localities. But some of the project groups decides that we want to make this project bigger, which means that we want to expand this project in all over Turkey or in some part of Turkey. And they call this action as national attacks. So by national attacks, they expand the feeling of social responsibility in other cities, in other universities where their peers are doing some other projects. So different projects come together and serve for the same purpose. If the purpose is to support children, they serve for children. If the purpose is to serve for youth, they work for youth by these national attacks. And peer education, while doing this, peer education is something essential for expanding the knowledge and experience of young people to other young people. They learn much, we experienced that, they learned much more easily, effectively, and quickly in the way of peer education. Another participation mechanism is we let them to represent Community Volunteers Foundation by themselves towards the local governments, local authorities by themselves, which means when they want to organize an activity or a project, they get all their permissions from the local governments by themselves. They represent talk by themselves, or if they want some sponsorships, they go to the companies, either public sector or private sector, they get their sponsorships by themselves. So they have all the power, actually, because we believe that young people have their own power if we let them to do so, if we give them enough space, if we listen to them very carefully, and if we believe in them. This is very important. So I believe that, and we as Community Volunteers Foundation believe that, as you also said, 1/3 of our population consists of young people. So we have to ask the opinions of youth much more than before. We have to enable them to express their ideas, feelings. We have to believe in them, because we know that if we believe in them, they have all the energy, all the power to achieve anything they need. This is very important. Youth is not only beneficiary, but they should be a part of the whole.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ayşe.
you.
It's so important to hear about the mechanism, which is sincere and sustainable. Thank you so much. We'll have another question for the second round. So let's continue with dearest Maria. Could you please tell us about Learning for Wellbeing Foundation and its mission? What are the primary initiatives and the main activities?
Thank you. First, I think I would support anything that has been said up to now, and we would be in full agreement and alignment with that. I would like to go back, though, to the beginning of the day today when we were talking about multiple crises. I have been 20 years working in philanthropy, and I have been hearing about these multiple crises for 20 years. Wow. And I was young before, so we have an issue. So there is something more that needs to be changed in order for that systemic change that everyone working in social issues wants to impact, right? So on the one hand, we really believe in intergenerational collaboration, not because it will find maybe the solution, it'll just make it better. So that societal new idea, response, the creativity that is needed, it needs to come through intergenerational approach. And in this respect, for example, we did a project this year called Common Ground, where we put a group of older and younger people together to go for political solutions, proposals for the new European Parliament, for example, in a very concrete way. But there is something more in our perspective, and is that for that collective change, we need to change something in the individual. We need to support something at the individual level. And so the way we approach the learning for well-being, it's something that you can learn, it's a process. So it can be guided, it can be taught. And we want to also, well-being, we interpret it also in a holistic way, so it's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, but not necessarily interpreted in a religious way. It's whatever drives you, whatever brings you purpose in life, for you to fulfill your unique potential in life. So our idea is that if I am better with myself and my needs are met, I will relate with you in a different way, and we may collaborate to find solutions that are bigger than our self-interest somehow. You know, that's the proposal. So for that, we work with the schools, but we would like children to unlearn a lot of the things that the school are teaching them, because children are losing creativity, curiosity in the school system. So we would like to preserve that thing that we call the core capacities, and the core capacities are human skills that we are all born with. They're innate. They're not complex, problem solving or other complex life skills. They are simple, and we want them to be preserved. It so happened that UNICEF has validated our approach. So there is a report called What Makes Me? Core Capacities for Living and Learning, that I will invite you to search. It's available. And also there is something that we like to teach, not only children, but also the adults around them, so parents, teachers, that is called inner diversity. And it's something like, you know, you are born with an algorithm, and that is yours, and you need to learn how you function. The better you know how you function, the better you will be succeeding in everything that you want to do in life, even participation. Because it's not only to have young people participating, you want them to participate to their full potential, and you would also like to bring the best quality in their participation. But in a personal note, yes, I'm not speaking at the Learning for Wellbeing, I would like them to bring that change in the world so they don't repeat what we have done, and it's not that they start participating in the system and they perpetuate the system. So they're real agents for that societal change that we are aiming at.
While you're talking, I thought about a quote from Bernard Shaw. He said once, I have to stop my education once I begin to go to school. I know it's Bernard Shaw, it is kind of mean, but somehow it's true. So as you mentioned, in the foundation, you have many projects centered around child participation, youth empowerment, and also knowledge sharing. I think you're placing young people at the core of the process, and I think it's the key, because you have many young people on your board. So could you please tell us, how do you implement this approach?
Okay, so we have a board member here,
which we'll hear in the second panel of the day.
The second panel. I must say that I can say it because the idea is not mine, but the idea is quite genius and revolutionary. If we are working for children, how can we, or young people, how can not we make them part of finding the solutions or the programs that work for them? I need to say that at the beginning it was quite of a shake, and also from a legal point of view it was complicated to put in place. There were many legal barriers, so, but I mean it's doable, it's feasible. It so happens that we have a very bright group of young people that have been getting older as we have been together in this mission. I would say, as I said before, it brings also a diversity to your board that is very refreshing, and it doesn't make it perfect. The dynamic in our board is not perfect. I'm sitting in different boards. I have never found a perfect board, but it just makes it better. That's the thing, you know. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as Voltaire was saying, something like that. It just improves it. So the reason why we do, you were talking about mottos, we also have, I think we would call it principles. Of course, we have like a legal principle could be that Article 12 of the Convention of the Children's Rights says that, you know, this is an obligation. But I think more from a pragmatic point of view, you cannot include, I mean, if you don't include as part of finding the solution the people that you want to help, that, that's really bad. We have, I think that there are a couple of resources that I would like to share with people for them to go and look. One is one toolkit that we did with Eurochild, that is the organization representing the rights of children in Europe. It's called We Are Here, a toolkit for participation. It's both for adults and children. It's for NGOs or any other partner who wants to work with, who wants to do some participation. It's very concrete tools. They focus more on the process than on the outcome. And that is part of the approach of the Learning for Wellbeing. We focus a lot on participation as part of the process, less on the outcome. So, for example, we support partners, other foundations or other NGOs that come to us, provided they have a group of adults and young people wanting to do some social impact. We help them to support in the process of the participation in an intergenerational way. So that's something we do with partners. We're also chairing the group in Philea of young people and children. So we initiated this report that has been mentioned already about how different philanthropic organizations work with children. And our approach is more that they help us in the different projects that we do. They are part of designing the program. So it's not necessarily that they are just consulted. They are part of defining it together with us. It takes more time, so that needs to be understood and considered. I would like to say maybe also something as the old representative in the discussions today. There have been a lot of discussions since the Article 12 of UN in 1989 about effective participation, different models, different approaches. So there is a lot of literature already there. But our deep belief is that if you don't help that youth be empowered with those soft skills, they are less meaningful. So that's really something that I would like to share as a message, because it's not about having a right, it's about how you exert that right? Like being able to activate it, feel empowered to do it, understand it, and also having like the self-confidence and many other things to say my voice counts, which is not an evidence. It's like we sometimes give it for granted because it's written in an article somewhere. So that's my message.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think I'll need one more messages from all of you. I have a very short time, but I'd really like to hear some suggestions from you to the organizations who sincerely wants to do something about youth participation. Let's start again with Heather, please.
Great. I'm going to go a little meta on you here. And I'm going to say that we all need to start thinking about and working on our own adultism. And adultism is a term that we don't use very much. It's not common. We hear a lot about racism, classism, sexism, ableism, or even ageism, which is discrimination based on age. But in most places, that ageism, that means discrimination against older people. We rarely hear about the systemic inherent discrimination that young people face in our societies. Adultism is a belief that adults are better than children, are worth more than children, that their opinions are worth more than children, that they know better than children and youth. I mean, when I say children, it's children and youth. And that they have a right to make decisions about children without children's input. And it's everywhere. And I have to say that personally, I've been in the work world for almost 30 years. And I worked on international human rights, and I came to work for Girls Not Brides, which is the Global Partnership to End Child Marriage. I've worked for UNICEF. And it was only in the past couple years that I realized how adultist I was. I mean, I was like, yeah, young people, yeah, we need to include. I was a youth activist. I was out there saying, include us, listen to us, when I was 16. And I worked to transform an organization that I later worked for. And I became adultist because it's so prevalent. We don't think about it. But there's a flip side to it, and it's called childism. And it's this radical idea that children are full human beings that have the same inherent worth as adults. And childism demands that adults and people in power take into consideration the needs and perspectives of young people on the same merits as those of adults. And I think that's a key thing. Like, in so much participation, it's like, oh, this is the young people's point of view, but it's the young people's point of view. It's not given the same merit or consideration as that of the adults in the room. And this isn't about taking power from adults. This is about sharing power. This is recognizing that we're all in it together. And it's not just child participation. This is a greater consciousness that we need to develop in ourselves, that the lived experience of children and young people is very different from that of adults, and all decision makers need to take that into account and to build around that.
I'll think about it. Thank you so much, Heather. Ayşe, same question.
My answer is that to increase the youth participation at all layers of everything in the world, different policies should be produced, and we should encourage the youth people to be in part of the decision-making process. And one of the important thing is that all these policies, which will be created by institutions, by governments, by authorities, by companies, all of them should be sustainable. This is very important. We shouldn't produce such type of things. We shouldn't make such type of things only because of it's a type of fashion or so, or it's a trend or so. Sustainability is very important. So creating policies is very important, and listening to them is very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maria?
I would probably say just do it. Have fun, enjoy the process, learn, provide you keep a few things in mind that I come again to my permanent message, stay in the human, right? So sometimes you may not know those legalistic thing or those limitations, but there is, if you do things from the right space and with your heart, you're going to find the solution on how to be inclusive in the right way, right? So I'll give an example. We were talking about internally in the organization about participation with dignity. Mm-hmm. What does this mean? This means that as we were inviting young people, for example, you understand that someone, well, you know, he was invited to speak somewhere and he didn't have the right shirt. It's just, you know, it was something that we maybe didn't think about it, but for this kid, it was not an evidence he didn't have like a shirt, and he wanted to look serious and look good, and so there was something about the dignity there that is a very easy thing to think about and to support. You just need to think in a more compassionate way, or just more, yeah, as I keep saying, like this human thing, you know? Or, for example, we had kids participating in a conference, and then, so they were, it was not our conference, but we were there, and so the expenses were covered. Mm-hmm. But there were a couple of kids that they didn't have money to go after and just have like a drink with the others or something like that. So just, you know, have fun, try, do things, and keep also an open heart, and it will give you the right compass into how to integrate the youth participation.
Wow. Thank you so much for this inspiring and permanent principles and messages you're sharing. It's so important to think about how we can move forward together and with an open heart, as Maria said. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a privilege for us. Hanımlar, beyler, değerli panelistlerimiz için olsun, kıymetli.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our valuable panelists, please. Thank you very much. And we are seeing them off with your round of applause. Thank you.
Da illüstrasyonları gördünüz, ben de.
You saw the illustrations. I tried to have a look, but I will actually follow it at home. I took notes as to how to go on. Now we're going to continue with the second panel of the day. It's very exciting because we're going to talk about philanthropy with the experience of youth. I would like to invite the program's director of youth organizations, Ela Evliyaoğlu, for moderating this panel. I will give the floor to her. The stage is ready, and with Ela, we're going to invite the panelists, board member of Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, Aksa Ali, disabled rights activists, Bahar Yavuz, Society Volunteers Foundation board member Emre İpekyüz, and climate activist Seren Anacıoğlu. Yes, let's not lose time. Let me give the floor to Ela. Hi, everyone. I would like to thank Duygu Demirağ and the participants of the previous panel for their valuable participation. I'm Ela Evliyaoğlu. I have 10 years of experience in youth rights, and I am the program's director in Go4. We are the umbrella platform for youth organizations in Turkey. We involve youth in decision-making processes, and we work to create inclusive youth policies. Until now, we heard different organizations and best practices about youth. Now we're going to hear the topic from the subjects. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our guest, Aksa Ali from Learning for Wellbeing Foundation. He's a board member. He's active at Young Scope, and he has advocacy experience in this area. He's been working with Europe organizations for 7 years, and he is working to increase awareness about minorities. He has a degree in economy, and right now he's working at a private bank. Bahar Yavuz is a colleague. She's a graduate of psychology. She has expertise in ableism and trauma issues. Since 2012, she has been working in rights-based organizations like the Association for the People with Visual Disabilities and Association for Women with Disabilities, and she's working in the areas of youth and gender equality. Emre İpekyüz is a society volunteer, and he creates workshops and game content. He worked with thousands of children and hundreds of youth in 3 different countries. Seren Anacıoğlu is from Bahçeşehir University School of Law. She's a 2nd grader. She's interested in the human rights dimension of climate crisis. She is also working in different organizations like Animal and Nature Rights Club, Fridays for Future, and Climate Pioneers. So we're going to get started. Welcome all, and thank you for joining us today. Aksa.
Please share some insights.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. My journey began when I was 16 years old in high school. And my school was a melting pot. We were diverse. We had over 100 languages spoken in our school, and universities loved us. We were extremely diverse, and they wanted to come to our school and conduct research with us. Now, for a while, this was amazing, but after a while, the students felt like they were not receiving a voice here, and that they did not have an opinion on the research that they were taking part in. So myself, and along with some of my other peers, we formed the Student Research Committee. Now, this was a committee that was at the forefront of the research that took place in our school. We made the decisions on what research we wanted to take part on and our rights when we were taking part in research. And alongside Newcastle University, we were able to publish the Student Research Protocol. This was a guide on how students and researchers should work together and not just take from each other, but give and take and benefit from one another's experience. And most importantly, the students' right to say no. I was able to present this to our district's Board of Education, Young Scots, which is Scotland's national youth and information charity, and the Children's Commissioner of Scotland. So it was very successful, and it was a guide that was used by researchers to take when they went into schools on how to work with young people and children. And I'm also I'm Scottish Pakistani, so I am a minority in my country, which is why I feel passionate about race equality. And alongside Young Scot, we were able to come up with an action plan and publish these recommendations on Scotland's race equality framework. Now, this framework is a way to highlight the issues around race equality. Now, this is employment, health, welfare, education, and how to kind of come up with ideas on how to better tackle these from a youth perspective. These documents were made by adults, hence why we stepped in to come up with ideas from a youth perspective. And we presented this to our former Cabinet Secretary of Communities, Social Securities and Equality, so they can take into account what the youth felt about this. And it was also another very successful venture, and we hope that there is a fairer future for all in Scotland, hence why I'm so passionate about race inequality and how to tackle this. Thank you.
Thank you. You're also a board member in Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, and in the first panel, Maria already talked us about the mechanisms the foundation has for youth inclusion. So could you please share your experiences as a young board member? How inclusive was the process, and what aspects did you learn?
I mean, Kova perfectly said it all, that our board is not perfect. I don't want to say it's completely functional and we're perfect and we do everything right. It's a journey. And I've been with the board for 4 years now, and I learned something new from all the board members, older and younger, every single time. So it is a journey, and we learn so much from each other. I hope that the older members can see a fresh new perspective of how we see issues in today's world, and also that we are able to learn from the experiences and all the vast experience that the adults have in the board. I say that in quotations because I'm 24 now, so I don't know how young I am anymore. But yeah, so we are very different, but we are so alike, with a passion to make the world a better place for children. Thank you.
Thank you, Aksa. Şimdi Bahar'la devam edeceğiz.
We're going to continue with Bahar. Can you talk about your own activism journey, your work in the disability rights area, and how you evaluate this work in the field of philanthropy and what the shortcomings are? Hi everyone. In fact, my journey started when I was a university student. Before that, I was an introvert little girl who couldn't voice her own rights, and now I can advocate for other people's rights as a young woman. I can speak here today, and I'm not hiding my face. I think this is the biggest contribution of this journey for me. When I started university, there was a student club for people with visual disability, and we were taking certain actions. Then we established an association. I was the founding member. 1 year after its inception, with the support of Sabancı Foundation, we started a 3-year program. In fact, this was an initiative for university students with disabilities, and we had different friends from different disability groups. With the support of Sabancı Foundation, we started this journey, and after this, a lot of students did not just start to work for their university and activate the disability units, but they also had other initiatives and other associations for the disabled youth in Turkey, and they became a pioneer in this area. They created change that can be a pioneer in this area. So as a subject in this journey, there were people who walked with me for the youth with disabilities. They're not just beneficiaries, they don't just have needs. They can create policies, they can create change, they can manage, they can lead the group. So this journey shows this to us, and throughout this journey, aside from my own being a subject, I was nourished by other people's experiences. I learned and I grew a lot. During this journey and watching others, I learned several things. For one thing, this intersectionality of identities is very important. So there are certain barriers based on identity, like racism, sexism, or ableism. So there are actually certain issues that have an impact on our lives, and it has an impact on youth with disabilities. So in extraordinary times, certain priorities are listed, and the rights of or the needs of people with disabilities are unheard and unseen during those times. Therefore, in order to achieve participation, it's not enough to build ramps. Those are the times that we're going through. So in all steps of the way, people with disability are included in the last minute or are excluded altogether. Only certain identities are visible. This is a major problem area, because when we talk about disability, it's not just one type. I am blind, and everybody asks, how do you see? I mean, all blind people answer differently to this question. I mean, there is so much difference, so you can't just define things on the basis of a single type of representation. You can only include one or two people, but most people won't feel they belong, and you won't create a space where most people belong, and you will not really take into account their socioeconomic status, and you cannot read gender inequality together with disability. So these are things that make things difficult, really. Thank you, Bahar. Talking about youth, we generally hear some questions like, what do young people expect? What do they want? As if the youth is a monolithic group. But as we see in this room, there are representations from different walks of society. So Bahar, creating safe spaces for the participation of youth with disability, what are your recommendations on that? Well, actually, one of the most important things to do is to involve the youth with disability during the planning stage. Most disability organizations are non-young, non-women, and they are in a certain professional group, like psychiatrists, social service workers, families. They are such initiatives. So the decisions or the support or the collaboration is empowering to a certain extent, but it doesn't ensure enough participation. Therefore, nothing about us without us is the principle to follow. I mean, it's translated into Turkish in different ways, but I think the English version is the best. So it's important to heed this motto, and it's important to ensure all the subjects are heard, that they exist in all steps of organization. And about visibility too, these people should be involved, so it shouldn't be just a single spot or including them in a single layer. This is not enough to create change, because all of us learn so much from one another, although we have different identities. So it's very important to prioritize that. And disability is not only visible, it can be very situation specific, culture specific. It has different dimensions. So there are the invisible disability groups, and they are stigmatized more. So in order to include them, it's important to create different areas. So in all the learning and realization processes, it's very important to ensure flexibility. There has to be physical and digital accessibility fully, and there has to be a meaningful participation. Thank you, Bahar. We're going to continue with Emre. Emre is working as a volunteer in different NGOs, one being Go Forum member, Society Volunteers Foundation. You are a board member of the foundation. Can you talk about your volunteerism journey, how it started, and what is it to be a young member in a board? What did it bring to you? Thank you. First of all, I would like to talk about the organization of the Society Volunteers Foundation, because that's how I met them. Well, we young people get together in cities and universities, and we create society volunteer communities. Then we work hand in hand with other young people at the local level. We try to bring well-being to the community. After I moved to Bursa for university, the first 2-3 weeks, the university clubs start booths. I was walking past the booths and I saw this young person, and he asked, "Do you want to be a volunteer in our foundation?" That's how I met the foundation. He started explaining passionately. At first, I thought it was a weird process, and I didn't believe some of the things he said. They don't receive funds. It's completely youth. It's set up by youth and managed by youth in this university club, and they have realized so many projects, so many social events. I thought that was weird. And then when I first joined the project called Here I Am, it's the Uludağ University project, and for the last 10 years in Bursa, in the Blind Association, there is private courses offered to youngsters for their career, and they also do activism work. I met Yaren. She's blind from birth. For 1 year, we prepared for the university. I was very proud. Yaren is a psychology student, so she is part of our university club. We work together for disability rights. That's what I noticed in the foundation. As young people, we include all the young people we come across and continue to work to elevate the society. And then we had projects for children who were involved in crime or using drugs. Then I worked in gender equality projects. And right now, most of the time, I work as a youth rights activist. Oh, I would like to talk about one thing. In every project I write and in every NGO I join, I created the biggest social impact on myself. In every single project I joined, I had the chance to discover myself more. I started to notice things about myself more. I'll wrap up. So there is also this feeling of dissatisfaction. We wanted to create more social impact. We wanted to open up to different cities and different countries. And the Society Volunteers Foundation has more than 140 communities in more than 70 cities, so the organization was very helpful. As for the board, I think this foundation is a great example. I think it's the only one in Turkey. Half of the chairs and the board are occupied by young people, and it rotates every year. How does the process run? Under the Society Volunteers Foundation, there are more than 20,000 young people who are working actively, and every April there is this application process. There is a call. If you would like to apply for the board, you can become a candidate, and it's again the youth selecting youth. That's why we don't call it the Community Volunteers Foundation. We call it the Foundation of Youth, because we run all the processes and we participate in all of the processes. And as a young person, I'm very happy to be in such a large foundation. In strategic planning and corporate management, it offered a lot of benefits for me. And also, you work in social entrepreneurship. This is a very attractive area for young people. With foundations, how do you work? How do you work with NGOs in social entrepreneurship? And what do you recommend for philanthropy involvement? Well, these corporate responsibility projects, well, one of the principles that I like in Community Volunteers Foundation is lifelong learning. What do we understand by that? It's lifelong volunteerism, being able to learn in lifelong philanthropy, and a lot of community volunteer youth are angry because we met volunteerism at the age of 19 or 20 at the university, and as young people, we have this motto: it has to be earlier, it has to be at childhood, it has to start from very early ages. So volunteerism, civil society, climate crisis, animal rights, gender equality, we have board games, workshops, we get together with children, and this has been going on for 1.5 years. It's in Turkey, Egypt, Tunisia, so it's in 3 countries. There are hundreds of young people and thousands of children who became like mini volunteers in a way. As for my social entrepreneurship journey, of course, I saw a lot of benefits of this foundation. It's not just the Community Volunteers Foundation. I work as a volunteer in different foundations in Turkey. Their experience, their network, their trust in us facilitated the process for us. Like you said, right now, among young people, social entrepreneurship is an important target, but there is a very limited ecosystem because, as you know, in this geography and in the world, being young is difficult, and it's more difficult to be a young entrepreneur. Why? One of the main reasons is that not trusting young people, not involving young people. Well, as for entrepreneurship, it is even in the curriculum as a class. We started hearing about it at younger ages, but it's all sectorial or product-based. It's not a teacher or a program talking about entrepreneurship in philanthropy or social entrepreneurship, or young people are unaware of the career opportunities in this area. So this is very accessible. So I think that the foundations and NGOs should ensure that social entrepreneurship is accessible to every young person in Turkey. Let's say the young person heard about social entrepreneurship through a class like 101. What's the second barrier? There are several competitions, grants, microloans, network programs, mentorship programs available, but it's not very widespread for social entrepreneurship. So when you first start social entrepreneurship as a young person, you're mostly a university student, then you have difficulty taking steps. So NGOs and foundations, private sector should focus on young social entrepreneurs, maybe have more incubation projects, micro grant projects, so they should have education activities, particularly for young social entrepreneurs. This is very valuable for us because accessing a high-quality education in social entrepreneurship is very difficult for young people now. And the most important step is trusting young people. It's important to trust their social entrepreneurships and expand this area for young people. Thank you, Emre. We'll continue with Seren. Seren, you're 20 and activism is part of your life. Can you share with us how did you come up with this awareness about this climate emergency situation? Sure. I picked the School of Law as a climate activist to work in the field of climate activism. As of the age of 16, I'm a climate activist. And why did this start? On the 22nd of April, it's the World Earth Day. And then I learned that because of the heavy population in Istanbul, it can be very much affected by climate crisis, and Turkey as well, and Bangladesh and such countries can be affected, and they have a lot of rights issues, women rights, children's rights, human rights issues. I noticed this. So in the curriculum, it's just about turning off the lights and saving. But the climate crisis is more than that. As a climate activist, we wanted to show them this to the children on a right basis, and we wanted to offer them better education. So we started running campaigns, and we had a call for Turkey. We had a lot of climate strikes where thousands of people participated. I call it from 0 to 100. This is the age spectrum. So there were the climate strikes. And in these climate strikes, we try to access people and governments. We want to show the impact of climate crisis for the future and for now.
O zaman aslında başlamış.
And I was at the Kabataş Boys High School when I started climate activism, and what I realized was it wasn't just about widening the curriculum. We needed workshops about human rights. And I then organized the first climate conference in Turkey between high schools. And it's still ongoing, although I am not a high school student anymore. And other than that, in 2024, I had projects about reducing the use of plastics and about water. And I provided a consultancy in this area, and I became a climate ambassador at the European Commission. And I met the vice president of the European Commission in Brussels, and I had the chance to represent Turkey. And I reached the level of international activism, and I saw good and bad examples about activism there, and I had a chance to represent the examples in our country. And this year I also attended conferences in Belgium. And as a climate ambassador, the European Union, TEDx, provides a license to us, and I organized the first environmental TEDx conference in Istanbul in Turkey. And also as a student of law, as you know, there is the COP28 going on right now. And last year, there was the carbon emission commitment announced by Turkey. And of course, this was based on a calculation, and we actually identified the error in this report. And as Youth for Climate's Turkey, we filed the first lawsuit in this area because there was a miscalculation made, and we have been working in this area for a while now, basically. Thank you very much, Seren. Now I understand that you are the right person to ask this question. Now, how do you think the best conditions can be created in the area of philanthropy for climate activism and youth activism? Well, this year we at the Sabancı Foundation, we received training about this, and there was the training of trainers, and we learned a lot there. And actually, for April 23rd, Children's Day, we had a video published. And if you type safe children and youth activism, you'll be able to find it on YouTube, because we were identifying and emphasizing that there were some inequalities towards youth and children in this area. And of course, youth and children don't know their rights about activism because it's not part of curriculums in school. And actually, everyone has a right to shelter, water, and all these rights need to be communicated well as part of education, and then children and youth can become activisms. We also had a video about this, and I did the voiceover for it. It was an animated video, and we were trying to deliver information about the rights of children. So children don't just need to do homework, but they can easily be part of social areas, activism areas, and of course they need to be part of solidarity environments, and they need to be empowered, and foundations and NGOs need to support this. I also want to talk about another point. Other than creating such spaces, you know, people tell us you're the future, but then they don't want us to have a say in this future, or they don't create space for us, despite the fact that they say they're considering us. But especially at the legislative level and other areas, I don't think we are being heard enough. I believe we need to be heard more in the parliament, and there needs to be more members of parliament that are young. And only in that way the young perspective can be applied, youth perspective can be applied to the climate crisis as well. Okay, so yes, and what we do as well is we say it is today for the youth. And now when I look at you, you all have different academic lives and career paths, but you're all also involved in the area of philanthropy. So what would you like to say if you wanted to improve one thing in this space? Aksa, let's start with you.
I just believe, I also work full-time. I work at Morgan Stanley, which is an investment bank, and I believe that volunteering is important, there's no doubt about it, but it's providing opportunities to do volunteering is what a lot of organisations lack in. I feel very lucky that my organisation, one of our values is giving back to our communities, and we have a whole month dedicated to this where we are allowed time off to go and volunteer. So it's very important that organisations are giving, private organisations especially, are giving people the opportunity to volunteer, and that this is paid time off. It's easy to say, okay, yes, go volunteer, but you won't be getting paid for it. So if people were to choose between an income and going to volunteer, well, we know what they're going to choose. So it's important to give people these opportunities to go and volunteer for what they feel passionate about and give back to their communities. Thank you.
Teşekkürler Aksa.
Thank you very much, Aksa. Bahar? Okay, I think it works now. I am also part of my professional life, and I am trying to deliver what I learned in my volunteer work. And what I'd like to suggest is something that I believe can easily be done. If you currently have a youth participation mechanism, you can diversify this. This can be your number one task. If you have no youth participation for persons with disabilities, then you can start by including one young person with disabilities, and then you can continue. If you already have such a participation mechanism, then you can start including these people into your decision-making mechanism, starting with your first decision. Thank you. Well, the Community Volunteers Foundation has a very nice motto about this. We say, led by the young people, guided by the adults. So if we can all do this, I believe that philanthropy will be expanded all across this country and the world. Now, the youth are not just the owners of the future, we are the masters of today as well. Well, I'd like to say something about climate. If we are fighting nature right now, and if we win, we lose. So if we become aware of this, I think that will change a lot. And I see a lot of young people here, and I believe that there should be more opportunities for youth in such conferences. I mean, if there are some attendance fees, for example, there should be discounts for youth, or maybe it should be free of charge for youth. And in this way, young people can join such conferences, and they can then maybe embark on their own activism journeys. Of course, it's not just about a conference, but this is just one example. And I believe sustainability is very important. This year, when I went to Belgium at the European Parliament, there was a very important draft that was passed, and it was it had started with the Rana Plaza disaster. It is a textile company in Bangladesh. It is a well-known textile plant, and the building collapsed, and thousands of women lost their lives in that example. So yes, of course, with the earthquake disaster, we are all devastated, but there can be such buildings that collapse, and we should avoid having unsafe structures and unsafe work, for especially where women work. Thank you very much, Sarah. And I would like to thank all of the panelists for these valuable contributions. And I'd like to thank the Sabancı Foundation team because generally we see events where youth are just on the display window, really, but they're not actually included. But this is very special, and we would like to thank you for that. And I can see that you have a lot of questions for our participants, so you can make use of our time in the foyer to interact with them, and I am sure they'll be happy to respond to your questions. I'll leave the floor to Duygu Demirda, sorry. Yes, I would like to thank Ela for this moderation as well. It was great. I took a lot of notes, really, and I am going to go back to this part and listen to it once again because everyone expressed themselves very well. I have a lot of takeaways from this session. So, dear guests, our stage is being prepared once again. And we saw that Mina Yanca's illustration has been showing us a great summary of the day. And here we see the second panel illustrated by dear Mina. So truly, I believe I'm going back to what I first said at the beginning. You know why we feel like family in this hall? Because I am going to be leaving here today with sentences in my mind and with the belief I have, with the faith I have in these brilliant young people. I would like to thank everyone for their contributions and what they have done overall. And I'd like to thank the Sabancı Foundation for uniting us here. I'm sure we are walking away with many question marks, but we also heard very bold statements about solutions for the issues we're facing. Now, shortly, we're going to have our lunch in the foyer, and I am going to meet people who I haven't met yet there. And then at 2 p.m., we will be back here in this hall because there is a very exciting lounge of Sabancı University for youth. Let's hear about the details. The manager of social sensitivity projects of Sabancı University, dear Zeynep Bahar, welcome on stage, please. Welcome. Thank you. Hello. Now, first of all, as I am making this announcement, I am not conveying just my own excitement, but many people who have been part of this project. Since day one, Sabancı University has never feared change and has always been the leader of change as a university. And we don't just try to focus on delivering good education to individuals, but we also focus on life in general. And as our university was established with our founding president of the Board of Trustees, Güler Sabancı, and all of our leaders and their great visions, we focused on raising individuals who are sensitive about the world, who have high levels of awareness, and we focused on creating the social sensitivity projects. And for about 25 years now, we have been setting an example for other universities as well. And as we have heard from many people here today, of course, social responsibility projects are drawing a great deal of attention amongst youth, and we also wanted to reinforce this curiosity, and we wanted to bring youth to the forth, and we have our new award program that we are launching today. It is the I Am Sensitive Awards between high schools, and we will be sharing details about this award with you. And from now on, we will have awards granted to their recipients on International Volunteers Day on the 5th of December, and hopefully we'll be with you next year on this day for our awards ceremony. Thank you. And one minor reminder, we're back here at 1, not at 2 p.m. It's at 1 p.m. And it will be the first get-together of this award, and hopefully there will be many more to come. Now, of course, as we lend a hand to one another, we move forward. We've heard examples today, and I hope we will see many more examples in the future. Thank you for joining us today, and hope to see you in future seminars. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Güler Sabancı and Ms. Nevgil Gülsel Safkan and all of our speakers on stage for a family photo with a round of applause.